Ed, what do we know about these deals that lump in a little company like Supermicro along with a big behemoth like Nvidia?
Yeah, I mean, the unlock is the ability for Nvidia and AMD to sell their latest generation cutting-edge processor, GPU AI accelerator into that market, Saudi Arabia, right? The Commerce Department announced last night they would rescind the diffusion rule, which in simple terms was a technology export restriction. The reporting had been that were it due to go into effect on the 15th, tomorrow, the US would not have enforced it anyway. And now the question is, well, will we get a new rule and what will the parameters of that be? But you're really smart to flag Supermicro because literally what we're talking about is the building of data centers in the Gulf. If you can send the GPUs, then a name like Supermicro, which simply packages them into server racks, can then proceed with its deals to do that as well. So their deal with DataVault's really interesting. As you know, it's $20 billion. I would point out that that business is a much lower margin business than actually Nvidia does, just by designing the chip. I think you also showed AMD. I would point out that the buoyancy of AMD is partly informed by a $6 billion additional share buyback they authorized this morning, which is on top of $4 billion they were already doing. So take that into account. But just look at the research on the sell side from BI. This is immediate sales growth that policy has unlocked for those two names in that region.
It's interesting, Ed, I don't know if you know the numbers to this. I realize this is very new news, but something that really struck me on the heels of these deals being cut or these talks advancing is the fact that this is being done in an energy super hub. Is there a chance here to really accelerate AI computing power through the Middle East, given that costs could actually be a lot lower?
Well, in short, yes. Building data centers requires several things: capital, space, time, and the correct political and regulatory environment. And most who follow the market would agree that Saudi and the UAE are places that conform to those specifics. So take the deal, for example, between Nvidia and Humane. The first phase is 18,000 GPUs. We measure the size of a data center in megawatts, literally in energy demand. That first phase is a 500 megawatt data center. Technically, that's at the hyperscale level, what we call hyperscale. But if you compare those to data centers around the United States, those range from 5,000 to 11,000 megawatts. So it's small by comparison, but Saudi and the UAE have the tools to get it done. And that's why, again, you see from Bank of America or Bloomberg Intelligence this multi-billion-dollar sales opportunity each year for the chip makers, because they'll move fast in moving the product to those nations and start building.
Ed, there's a lot of talk about the Qataris giving President Trump an old used airplane.
I heard you talking to Anne-Marie about this. Yeah, go ahead.
And the security concerns there. But what about giving the Saudis, who have such a close relationship with China, these chips that are capable of beating the Whopper in global thermonuclear war? I mean, isn't there a security concern with sharing this kind of high-level tech?
There is security concern. And the whole point of the Commerce Department and the Trump administration reviewing the diffusion rule was the concern that if they allowed those nations in the Gulf access to the technology, those nations have a close relationship with China. They could act almost like a sales channel or third-party funnel. So what we do have is corporate deals. Nvidia has a deal, Cisco has a deal, AMD has a deal, Supermicro has a deal. We do not have bilateral agreements between the United States and Saudi and the UAE. Those are expected nation to nation to come in the coming days. And how they address the China question is absolutely top of mind for everyone. But again, go back to the Bloomberg Intelligence deck on what this means for sales growth of Nvidia and AMD in particular. It helps them offset the revenue to China. So you'd think that those companies would play ball, be more conducive. And then the next question is, if they rescinded the diffusion rule last night and it won't go into effect tomorrow, what does the new rule look like? Does it explicitly codify restrictions on third parties passing the technology to China? You're absolutely right that that is the key question from here on in.